All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are diving into some seriously mind-bending stuff today. Microsoft is making waves, claiming they've built the world's first topological qubit processor. Hey, you heard that right. They're calling it Majorana 1. And honestly, the science behind this thing is like something straight out of Star Trek. But you know us, we love to get into the nitty-gritty. So we're taking a deep dive today into their announcement and this Nature article you sent us. So let's unpack this beast. What do we have here? A quantum leap? Or just some clever marketing?
It's a bold claim, for sure. You know, a lot of brilliant minds out there are trying to build stable qubits, the building blocks of quantum computers. And now, Microsoft says they've cracked the code with these. Wait for it, Majorana 0 modes.
Okay, yeah, because let's face it, regular qubits are notoriously unstable. Like trying to balance a house of cards on a roller coaster. But these Majorana things are supposed to be much more robust. So how do they actually work? Break it down for us.
Well, it all starts with creating a new state of matter called a topological superconductor. Yeah, you heard that right. A whole new state of matter. And within this special material, they've created these tiny nanowires. Now, at the ends of these wires, you get these Majorana particles, which are kind of like half an electron.
Hold on. They created a whole new state of matter just to build a qubit.
It's pretty wild, right? But here's the key. The presence or absence of a Majorana particle at a specific end of the nanowire. That represents the qubit's state, a 0 or a 1.
So they're essentially manipulating these almost electrons to store information. My brain is already starting to hurt. Okay, so how do they actually read the information? These particles are notoriously elusive, right?
Right, and that's where things get even more interesting. They use something called the parity method. They don't actually directly measure the Majorana particles themselves. Instead, they look at the overall state of the system. It's kind of like figuring out if there's an odd or even number of socks in a drawer without actually counting each sock.
Okay, that's a pretty good analogy. So it's about inferring information from the overall state, rather than looking at the individual particles.
Exactly. Now, another thing Microsoft's been highlighting is their use of digital control for their qubits, which is kind of a big deal in the quantum world.
Yeah, that definitely caught my eye too. Most quantum computers use analog signals, right? Which I imagine is incredibly tricky to manage.
You got it, like trying to tune a radio in the middle of a thunderstorm. But with this Majorana 1, Microsoft says they're using much simpler digital pulses. Think on or off, like a light switch. Much less finicky.
So if analog control is like trying to play a Stradivarius violin that's constantly going out of tune, digital control is more like banging on a piano, less delicate.
That's one way to put it, yeah. The idea is that this digital control could be a game changer for scalability. Imagine trying to keep 1,000,000 violins perfectly in tune versus 1,000,000 piano keys. Much easier, right?
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Now, Microsoft talks about this single qubit design as a tetron. And their grand plan is to eventually build fault-tolerant quantum computers based on this. So first of all, what exactly is a tetron? And how does fault tolerance fit into all of this?
Okay, so a tetron is basically their fundamental building block. It consists of 4 Majorana 0 modes, and their goal is to scale this up. But to make a truly useful quantum computer, you need this thing called fault tolerance. Basically, the computer needs to be able to correct errors as they happen, which is crucial when you're dealing with something as delicate as quantum states.
Right, because even with these supposedly more stable topological qubits, there's still going to be some level of error, right? So it's like having a self-healing computer.
That's the idea.
Wild. But how close are they actually to achieving this fault tolerance?
It's early days. I mean, they've only just demonstrated control of a single tetron. But there's another piece to this puzzle that adds some weight to their claims. DARPA. You know, the U.S. military's research arm, they've chosen Microsoft for a major quantum computing project.
Whoa, DARPA's involved.
That's a pretty big vote of confidence.
It definitely is. So, okay, this all begs the question. What can you actually do with a 1,000,000 qubit fault-tolerant computer? I mean, besides make a really killer spreadsheet.
Well, that's where things get really interesting, but I think we should save that for part 2.
All right, cliffhanger. We'll be back soon to delve into the mind-blowing potential of this technology. But for now, we'll leave you hanging. Don't touch that dial.
Okay, so let's dive into the potential here. What could we actually do with a 1,000,000 qubit fault-tolerant computer?
All right, hit me with it.
Well, one of the most exciting areas is materials science. Imagine being able to design new materials from scratch, like atom by atom, to get exactly the properties you need.
So we're talking about like super strong, lightweight materials for spaceships, self-healing concrete for bridges, batteries that last for weeks, What else?
Exactly. The possibilities are pretty much endless, and it goes beyond just creating new materials. Think about drug discovery. Right now, it takes years and billions of dollars to bring a new drug to market,
Yeah, it's a really long and expensive process.
but a quantum computer could simulate the complex interactions of molecules with incredible accuracy, so scientists could design and test drugs virtually.
Wow. So that would mean faster drug development. And maybe even personalized medicine.
Exactly.
That's incredible. Okay, so what else?
Well, think about finance. Quantum computers could help us develop ultra-secure encryption to protect our financial data, and they could optimize complex logistics networks, leading to more efficient transportation systems.
So we're talking about solutions to some of the world's biggest challenges. But there have to be some downsides, right? No technology is perfect.
You're right, there are definitely some concerns. One is the potential for disruption. As quantum computers become more powerful, they could potentially break the encryption that protects a lot of our sensitive data, like financial transactions, national security secrets, that kind of thing.
So security is a big issue we need to think about.
Absolutely. Another concern is accessibility. Building and maintaining quantum computers is expensive and complex, so we need to make sure the benefits of this technology are available to everyone, not just a select few.
Yeah, equity is definitely crucial. Now, let's get back to Microsoft's Majorana 1 for a second. It's generated a lot of buzz, but some experts are skeptical. They're saying it's too early to declare victory, and that Microsoft still has a long way to go. What are their concerns?
Well, they do have a point. Microsoft's results are impressive, but they've only demonstrated control of a single Teshron, remember? Scaling up to 1 million qubits and keeping it stable and under control, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, it's like the difference between playing a single note on a piano and conducting a whole orchestra.
Exactly. Plus, there are other hurdles. Microsoft's approach needs extremely low temperatures, close to absolute zero, which requires specialized, expensive equipment.
So we're not going to have quantum computers in our homes anytime soon.
Probably not. But the first practical applications are likely to be in specialized fields anyway, like scientific research, drug discovery, material science. Those fields will need access to large-scale quantum computers, and building that kind of infrastructure will take time.
Even though we won't be carrying around quantum smartphones anytime soon, this technology could still have a huge impact on our lives.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, DARPA's involvement. What does it mean that they're backing Microsoft's research?
Well, DARPA is known for funding research that could be game-changing for fields like defense and national security, so their interest in Microsoft's work suggests they see potential applications for things like code breaking, intelligence gathering, maybe even developing new weapons systems.
That's a little unsettling.
It is. It reminds us that powerful technology can be used for good or bad, so we need to have open discussions about the ethical implications of quantum computing and make sure it's developed responsibly.
Definitely. You know, with all this talk about potential applications and future possibilities, I still have trouble wrapping my head around this whole topological qubit thing.
It is a mind-bending concept, but it all comes down to harnessing the weirdness of quantum mechanics. To create a more stable platform for computing, we're talking about manipulating the fundamental building blocks of reality to do calculations that were impossible just a few decades ago.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
It is, and that's what makes this field so exciting. We're pushing the limits of what we thought was possible.
All right, so bottom line, do you think Microsoft's Majorana 1 is a genuine breakthrough? Or is it just hype?
It's definitely a significant step forward in the field. They've shown that it's possible to create and control a qubit using Majorana particle. That's a big deal. But, and this is a big but, there's still a long way to go before we see practical applications.
So the jury's still out on whether Microsoft can actually deliver on their ambitious roadmap.
Exactly. The real test is whether they can scale up the system, overcome the technical hurdles, and actually build a fault-tolerant quantum computer with thousands or even millions of qubits.
Okay, well, we'll be following this story closely, and we'll keep our listeners updated on all the latest developments. Let's take a quick break and come back for the final part of our deep dive. Okay, I think my brain needs a reboot after all that. Quantum mechanics is intense.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big takeaway you want our listener to remember?
I think the key point is that we're on the verge of a computing revolution. Quantum computing has the potential to completely transform so many things, from the materials we use to build stuff to how we treat diseases.
That's a pretty huge deal. But we also need to be cautious, right? We talked about the security risks, the ethical concerns, and the issue of making sure everyone has access to this technology.
Absolutely. We can't just get caught up in the excitement. We need to be responsible about how we develop and use quantum computing.
It's not just about the science. It's about the impact it will have on society as a whole.
Exactly. And that's why everyone needs to be part of the conversation. The future of quantum computing isn't predetermined. We all have a role to play in shaping it.
Well said. So to our listener, stay curious, keep learning, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next big breakthrough.
It's an exciting field.
It really is.
Thanks for having me on to discuss this.
It's been a fascinating conversation. To all our listeners out there, keep exploring, and remember, the future is quantum,